Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today, a question from a viewer which very much falls into the category of dressing well in an environment where perhaps wearing traditionally business-like clothing is not going to work. And I'll explain as we go along, but I think the best thing to do is to just read this question from my viewer and you'll understand where we are. So it says, "Dear Ash, I need a bit of sartorial advice to help me rise to the challenge of dressing better for a reason. I am a 41-year-old self-employed carpenter and joiner, and I've recently started meeting clients in person more often. I am rightly proud of the extremely high standards of my work, and I've spent 2 decades reaching the top of my profession when it comes to skill and quality of work. But my current wardrobe does not reflect the quality of my business. I'm usually wearing worn flannel shirts, ragged jeans and dusty boots. How can I upgrade my appearance in a way that shows craftsmanship and care without feeling over-polished or fake? I know I'm not a dapper man, and a suit would feel unnatural in my way of life and in my business. But how do I look sharp and still look like a man who fits in with his environment?" And that question comes from David. Now, David poses a good question because I think even for men who work with their hands, your appearance is not just superficial. Yes, wearing worn clothing is what one might expect a man actually on the job to apparel himself in, because you don't want to wear nice clothing if they're going to get damaged or stained or ripped and the like. But the reality of the matter is that even if you are working with your hands and you are even occasionally going to meet clients, you have to get into your mind that the way you present yourself, it is really a silent sales tool. Your clothing speaks for you, because I've got loads of research and it all suggests that the way that we dress influences the way other people perceive us, and actually about how we perceive ourselves and how we will consequently perform in situations in front of other people. And that research is really quite extensive and goes back over generations of people who have dressed to deal with situations in life. One of the biggest things is first impressions. They are instant and they are sticky. So when you meet people, and I know it's wrong, all right? But people always write to me when I make these comments that, first impressions count and they're instant. And it's wrong that people do that. Why should we be influenced by the superficial outward appearance of people that we meet? I get it, I agree with you. But the simple reality is human evolution has brought us to a stage where when we see somebody, we objectively weigh them up and we make an assessment on their appearance based on what we can see, even before we speak to those people and learn about their character, and that stays with us after that initial impression. So the simple fact is, if you want to make a good impression of people, and go with the research which suggests that we rate people who are wearing better clothing as being more competent and trustworthy, and we make that assessment in a fraction of a second. So the best thing you can do to get on the right side of people is make that good first impression when you first meet them. Because professional attire shapes your credibility in the minds of people that we will meet. Professional dress research confirms that clothing directly affects your credibility of competence and confidence, regardless of what field of endeavor that you work in. So whilst it's well acknowledged that men who work in, shall we say, the professions of law, of finance, education, anything to do with, really not getting your hands dirty, the better that you dress actually enhances other people's opinion of you and your own opinion of status. The same goes if you get your hands dirty. The way that you attire yourself, you clothe yourself, makes a big difference. Because whether it's right or wrong, the way that you dress will affect the opportunities that present themselves to you as you go through life. Famous economists like Daniel Hammermesh have proved through experiments that men who dress well earn more money, secure better opportunities in life. So why would you not want, simply through changing the way that you clothe yourself, to have better opportunities and a better opportunity of earning money, of having a better quality life? And one thing which I will say, which is often overlooked in any research when it comes to clothing, is that your clothing affects your personal inner state. There's a long established mental thing called enclothed cognition, which means that not only does the way you dress affect the people you encounter, it affects you as well. If you have ever got dressed up to go to a special event, presentation at work, a wedding, or whatever it might be, you put on your best clothes, you take a bit of time having a really good shave and put on a bit of cologne, make sure your tie knot is just so, your shoes are sparkly and shiny. You look in the mirror, you feel like $1 million. You skip out of that door feeling you can take on the world to a different degree than when you walk out through the door wearing your jeans and your t-shirt. That, sir, is enclothed cognition. And that is why when you get into the habit of dressing well, you can deal with situations with that inner confidence which comes from knowing that you look good in the eyes of the people that you meet, and that means you feel good on the inside as you meet those people. So what I would go on and say to our friend David, who's written this question in, is that remember, right, as a craftsman, as an expert within your trade, as you very clearly are, dressing well in your workplace, it's going to be nuanced, all right? It's not about wearing a collar and tie for you. It is about dressing in a way which aligns the way that you look with the work that you do. So if your work is meticulous, and as you say, it is of the highest standard within the field in which you operate, but you dress in a sloppy and professional manner, unfortunately, that is how you are going to be perceived by many of the people who meet you. Because if you're doing carpentry work, and I give you a call and say, come round to my house, give me a quote on a new kitchen I want doing, or something of that nature. I don't know what work you're in, but I'm guessing it's something like that. And you turn up and you look, in as if you've just come straight from the building site. You're covered in dust and you're looking grubby and dirty. It's not, in my mind, I am not aligning you with an elite level of workmanship. Now, some people might say the opposite. They might think, this guy, he's obviously getting his hands dirty, he's doing the job. To me, that instills confidence. But I think there's a tightrope to be walked in this area, and that's what we're looking for. What we're trying to do is to find a way of clothing yourself which is subtly sends the message that you are very good at what you do, and you're conscious of that even in the way that you dress, because of course dressing yourself crosses boundaries. It's not just being sharp and dapper. And I agree with you, a suit is not going to fit in this situation, as it is for practically anybody who works in the trades or the professions other than what we've talked about. What we're looking for, the goal we're seeking, is rugged, authentic professionalism. And that can be achieved in a number of ways. We want clothing which reflects your craftsmanship, all right? So that's going to entail things like sturdy fabrics, canvas, cottons, where there is visible care to your clothing. So what I mean by that, you don't just throw on your overalls or whatever you're wearing and they're utterly unironed, they're filthy and they're dirty. Visible care shows that you are interested in your appearance, which in my mind tells me you're interested in your workplace and what you do. And you want it to be a purposeful fit. You want to look as if you've gone out and you've bought that garment for yourself. You're not wearing a pair of old overalls that you've just picked off the pile somewhere. You look put together, even though you look entirely appropriate for the work in which you're doing. Because this builds client trust. Looking clean and put together instills in the minds of people that you encounter, here's somebody who, yes, he's working in a job where he's getting to grips with physical materials and getting the job done. But, he's also signaling a respect for me, because when he's come to my house, my workplace, wherever it might be, to give me a quote, to talk about a job, he looks respectable. He looks as if he does the job of being a carpenter and joiner, yet at the same time, he's tidy, he's decent. And that's the image that we want to go for. And we want authenticity as well. You're absolutely right. It wouldn't look right if a carpenter turned up to your house in a three-piece Ralph Lauren suit with a fancy silk tie and, dapper mug strap shoes. It's just not going to fit in the image of what we want. So what we want are rugged, real-world clothes, and thankfully, there are so many brands these days in the workwear category. You're going to be spoilt for choice when it comes to dressing in this way. And also, what I would suggest is you want clothing which can easily be transformed from, yes, real world application on the workplace. You can be working away 1 minute. You can get a phone call. Client says to you, can you come round? I've got a half-hour slot in an hour's time. Drive round, give me a quote. I maybe have a new job for you. So you don't want to go home, have a shower, get changed into clothes to go and do that. You want the capacity to transition from actually working to be able to go around there, throw on maybe a layer or two or just something which makes you look respectable. And you want the ability to do that pretty much all of the time. So that needs to be borne in mind when we think about what we're going to dress you as. Right, let's get down to this. I've got 3 swift, actionable tips which are going to turn you into a presentable tradesman, but it doesn't involve a suit, it doesn't involve a dress shirt or a tie at any point. Now, my first tip for you is really we're going to focus on the fit and the care of what we're wearing to start with, because the difference between ragged and rugged is basically down to you, what you're choosing to wear, and how you are looking after it, because it's all about the intention of how you're wearing those clothes. So first of all, choose well-fitted work shirts, which are going to be material which is warm, right? So you want, presumably you're often working outdoors, you want something which is practical and sensible. You mentioned you wear often worn flannel shirts, that's fine. Flannel is a great choice for a situation like this. Also other cottons, because it's great in the summer months. It's a natural fabric, allows the body to breathe. It's an ideal thing. Chambray, things like that. Other versions of flannel and cotton, it's going to be great. But go for something which fits you well, which has maybe patterns on it, which are going to be more resistant to the appearance of dust and grime. So, you know what I mean. The plaids, the tartans, they tend to look better and they're able to resist being overwhelmed by dust. If you have a solid block colour, maybe a red shirt, it's going to show up the dust and the dirt a lot more easily than something which has more of a pattern on it. However, what I would also suggest, you mentioned that your flannel shirts are worn out. I would say, well, it's time to retire them, sir. Turn them into useful rags that you can use in the workplace. But once they start to get holes in them, by all means, patch them to a degree, keep them going, get the most you can out of your work clothes. This isn't a fashion parade, but when they come to a certain point where they're just looking, as I say, ragged rather than rugged, time to take them out of rotation, bring something new in. Go for those materials and things which just look good. Because really, if you're going to a client-facing situation, you don't want to look like you've been living on the streets for the last 6 months. You want to look at least as if you are presentable in somebody's home. And that isn't going to be clothes which are falling off you and are totally threadbare. And when it comes to the boots, you said that you wore your boots to a point where they're very dusty. All right, that's fine, I understand that. You're maybe working on a lathe or on saws, lots of sawdust flying around the place. Your boots are going to get dusty pretty quickly. But if you're choosing boots which are, work boots, yes, but of leather construction, keep them in a fairly presentable level by, at least polishing them, conditioning them once a week. So that when the time comes, when you get that phone call from the client, come round the house, all you need to run the brush over the boot, just a minute of your time, even a rag, right? That old shirt that you've cut up into a few rags now. Just whip over the boot, the underlying polish will come through, that little bit of a shine. So when you get round to the client's house, and of course when you enter the home, you'll obviously offer to take off your boots. They will look down at your boots. They will see that your boots are tidy and presentable, even though you're slipping them off to go into the home. But it leaves that lasting impression, and that's what you want to put across. Now, my second little tip for you is to layer your clothing with purpose so that it is both practical but it looks also intentional when you have to meet people and when you're just feeling good about yourself when you're working. So start with the base layer. A shirt, we've talked about a shirt, keep it sort of a mid-weight layer so that even on cooling days in the autumn, in the winter, chambray, flannel, perfect, nice colourful patterns, keeps it cheerful, but also looks good in the workplace and when you're meeting clients. Next, get another layer over the top of it. Now is a great time to be in the market for something like a utility jacket, or as we've now renamed them, chore jackets, right? Because these are what many people are choosing to wear. I'm wearing one now. This is a chore jacket by the brand AndSons, which I've had for way over a year. I absolutely adore these cotton chore jackets because they are also very practical. They're an extra layer, but they're somewhere between a sweater and something a little more formal. So they allow you to wear them just over a t-shirt, as I am now, but yet presenting a more finished appearance to people. And of course, there are so many brands. I've mentioned AndSons, there's Filson, there's Dickies, Carhartt. Many of these workwear brands have now transitioned to more streetwear and are being worn by men all of the time, which is great for you because you have a lot more choice. But choose something which is going to last long. So something in a canvas, thick cotton, something which has got years of wear but still looks good over that period is going to be best for you. When it comes to below the waist, I would say dark, straight-legged trousers, jeans, denim. This is what denim is really all about. I often wage a bit of a war about denim being worn by men in all walks of life because it becomes the default lazy man's trouser. But actually, denim is workwear. So when you're in the workplace, this is the time to wear your jeans. And I would say dark colours tend to look a bit more professional. Of course, they fade over the years, but it still looks rather good. Straight cut, don't have it really clingy and tight. It's not good working anyway. But go for things which are flattering for your appearance, but also give that finished edge. And you don't need to spend money on these things. You do not need to, buy those branded jeans which cost 10 times more than they should. Just get the budget modes and they're going to last for years and keep you looking good. Your leather boots, work boots are essential. You don't want anything falling on your foot and cutting your toes off, but at the same time, spend that little bit more than those budget cheap end models, something which is made of leather, which you can condition, which is repairable. So as the years progress, they're going to actually look better as they gain a patina. And remember, worn is fine when it comes to your footwear, dirty is not. So even though your boots have got years behind them and they're a bit worn, there's no excuse for wearing dirty footwear. Stay on top of it, run the rag over them, keep them looking good. And don't forget the accessories, right? Wear a belt. Don't have your trousers sagging round your arse with everything hanging out for the world to see. Wear a nice leather belt. It'll last you a bloody lifetime and it's going to look good and presentable. And wear a watch. A watch on a man's wrist shows that time is important to him. You're going to get to appointments when people tell you to. I know the argument is everybody has a mobile phone in their back pocket, which is an incredibly accurate timekeeping item. But a wristwatch is a physical demonstration to people. It doesn't have to be an expensive automatic watch. Get a G-Shock, a Casio G-Shock. It says to the world, time is important to me. I've got a rugged, usable watch which lasts for years, yet tells people this man is going to be at our appointments when he says he is, because he's keeping an eye on the time. Now, my final tip for you is really just the finishing touches, and that is to have a client meeting uniform accessible to you in case you get that phone call. That could be the next big job. And this might mean just keeping, a spare shirt or a spare jacket in the back of your van. And maybe a brush, so you can brush off your sleeves, brush off your boots, so that you look that a little bit more presentable. Of course, you would go and wash your hands and spruce yourself up before you went to meet somebody. Do exactly the same with your clothing. Just have maybe that extra layer available so that when you need to, you can slip something on that looks that little bit more presentable. Because, As I said earlier, first impressions count and they're sticky. This is how people will remember you in subsequent meetings and maybe how they'll talk about you to other people. Yeah, the carpenter came around this morning. Good God, you should have seen the state of him. He had to disrobe on my doorstep before he came into the house because he was covered from head to toe in dust and mud. Right? Doesn't leave a good first impression. So just have that extra client uniform ready when that occasion calls for it. So there we go, David. I hope they were some practical tips for you that you can just employ in your future life without having to worry about wearing a collar and a tie and a suit, because it's not right for the job that you do. It's horses for courses. And what we've talked about today will make sure that you give the best representation of yourself when you meet people, and you will feel more confident knowing that you look right for the situation that you're in. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up to show you like it, and subscribe if you'd like to see future videos like this. Ask me a question just like David did. Drop it into the comment section, or preferably send me an email. Comes directly to me. If you'd like to join me on the journey to Chap Nirvana, you can become one of my patrons. Sign up via the link in the show notes below. Tiny monthly fee, and you will get the extra videos which I make each and every week exclusively for my patrons, as well as offering a person-to-person opportunity to speak to me should you wish to do that. So until the next time we meet, take care, dress well, and I'll see you soon.